The elevation template and layout works similarly to the other templates. It just has a different arrangement of layers and what those layers do. You can see here I've got, similar to the floor plan, grids on top, elevation notes. I do a grade line, I have dimensions, I have an elevation mask, which is used to hide portions of the elevation I don't want to see that are below grade, like the foundation, SketchUp model, and again, title block. So the first step I do is I'll select SketchUp model. I will import that same plan we were doing before. Which is the base plan, which saves, as I mentioned, the floor plans, elevations, roof plan. So now I know I'm going to use the full width, but I'd like to get 2 elevations per sheet. And that works well with quarter scale on a 24 by 36 inch sheet. And so I just do it approximately. I can resize it if I need to a little bit later. Once I've got it positioned, I go through and select my elevation, north elevation. And then I will select my scale at quarter inch. And now I've got my elevation there to scale. So typically what I'll do then is I will just copy this elevation, since I'm already in the SketchUp model layer, like this. And then I will choose the next elevation, which is east. Since it's already set to scale, and it's positioned correctly, I don't need to worry about it. You can see this home has a basement, so we will be hiding that basement. If you want, you could copy. One other trick to do is you could delete the second blank sheet. You can make an exact copy of the sheet here. You don't have to, but I like these to be named correctly over in the text, not necessarily mandatory. You can see the second sheet's already changed its numbers, and then I just go through and change those to the south and west elevation, let them render, and then the west elevation. Now, of course, since we made a copy, the sheet number all worked out great, but I need to go in and edit the text. And believe me, there's times when you forget to do this part. But it's nice to do it early when you're remembering and thinking. So then the way I get the grade line to work, most times I know projects really well, so I don't have to refer back and forth to the site plan, but I do use the site plan. So as an example, I have it open on this screen. I am going to move this just so you can see. I'll do this briefly. But what's nice with materials, you can actually look and get a good idea of where that grade line really is in relationship to the building. So, I'm a couple down here on the board form concrete. I can see how much of the board form concrete is exposed here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 boards. So I know I can get it exact, or at least close enough for setting a grade line. I've had people say, well, how do you know it's exact? And the reality is you actually don't, because most surveys are plus or minus whatever the contour interval is. So sometimes that's 1 to 2 feet. So we get it as close as we possibly can based on the contour. So I'm going to set this line at a weight of 6. And it's going to be solid. And I'm going to select the grade line layer. And so we went in here, we started 1, 2, 3, 4. I know my grade is approximately right about there. And I'm going to set it so I can see it. It was set for the hidden portion. And that actually makes sense, because that's about where it lines up with this entire elevation all the way across. Like that. Obviously, we're looking kind of perpendicular to the contour at this point. That's why it looks fairly level. Then what I do is, and I usually do this all together, so I'll do two of them so you can see what I do. But here, I know that I'm about at this elevation, because it's lining up here, all the way across to this point. And you can use some of the key points in the model to keep things straight and level. But at this point, it starts to slope up on the property. So I will quickly go back to the model that I'm referencing, and I'll look at where that's going to. So right here, I'm getting just below the second board form at this point. So I come over to here, and I know I'm right about almost midpoint there. So that landing actually just hits the surface of grade. And then typically we're going to want to have a swale that moves the water around this element. So there'll be a little bit of pitch away from this. But further back beyond, there's actually going to be portions of this that are buried further than this. So again, I just go back and forth between the site, and I look about where that is. So I've got pretty minimal back here, 8-inch. I've not done my swale grading yet in the model, so it's going to be a little bit lower. So back here I'll have it at its minimum by code, which is 8 inches. And then I've got a little bit more exposed there, so I simply go back to that line, and I have actually, from here, I had 2 exposed, like this. And then there's going to be a third line, because this next area is actually even further back, like this. So what I'm showing is the grade where the building meets it at this plane, and this plane. Then to make it look like a finished elevation, you want to be able to hide those elements that are below grade. Some places like you to dash in the foundations. This is a good time to do that. This development does not. If you have to dash them in, it's nice and simple because you just follow the lines. These show larger footings on the bottom because they're full retaining. But now what I'm going to go in and do is draw the mask. And so I select the elevation mask. I actually lock the grade line so that you don't continue that thick line. Select the draw tool, and I want this to be super thin, and actually I want it to be just fill, so I'm going to take the stroke off completely. I select one point of the grade, another point of the grade. Got that one done. This one's more complex, so here I'm going to follow the building line. There, I'll go back and fix that. It actually went off a little bit. You don't have to take away all the way to the end. It can be anywhere. You just have to get it down below the footings. And here I want to swing this back. I got a little curve on that line. Then you have the drawings, base elevations complete as they relate to grade, as shown on the site model that you have. This one was nice and convenient, one straight line, but a lot of times you'll end up with lots of different variation in the lines, especially on slope site. So you continue to do that until you have everything complete.